What is the difference between monolithic, SOA, and microservices architecture? Monolithic and service-oriented architecture, which is SOA, and microservices architecture are three different approaches to design and building software systems. Each has its own characteristics, advantages, and disadvantages. Let's talk about a detailed comparison of these architectural styles. The first we start by talking about the monolithic architecture. Monolithic architecture is traditional software design pattern where the entire application is built as a single indivisible unit. All components and functionalities of the application are tightly integrated and run as a single process. Let's talk about the characteristics of the monolith architecture. The first thing that we'll talk about, which is the no, no, the single code base. The application is deployed as one large code base. Second, tightly coupled. All components are interconnected and interdependent. Number three, single deployment. Updates and deployments are done for the entire application at once. And lastly, we have single point of failure. If one part of the application fails, it can affect the entire system. Let's talk about the advantages of the monolithic architecture. First, we will talk about the simplicity. It's easier to develop, test, and deploy for small and medium sized applications. We start talk about performance, so it's faster in execution as all components run within a single processor. And lastly, we have easier debugging, so it's easier to trace and debug issues within a single code base. Let's talk about the disadvantages. The first thing, we will have a scalability limitations. It's difficult to scale specific parts of the application independently. Number two, we have complexity with growth. So as the application grows, it becomes harder to manage and understand and maintain. Three, deployment challenges. Any small change requires redeploying the entire application. Let's talk about, oh no, let's talk about the service oriented architecture. Definition of the service-oriented architecture is an architectural pattern where the application is composed of discrete services that communicates over a network. Each service is designed to perform a specific business function and can be reused across different applications. Let's talk about the characteristics about it. First, we have decoupled services. Services are loosely coupled and interact through well-defined interfaces and protocols, typically using SOAP, which is a simple object access protocol, or REST, which is a representational state transfer. Number two, reusability. Services are designed to be reusable across different applications. And number three, we have interoperability, supports integration and of services built on different technologies and platforms. The advantages of the service-oriented architecture, let's start to talk about them. The first thing that we will talk about is the reusability. The service can be reused across different applications, reducing duplication. Second, oh no. Second, we have scalability. Why is this happening? Oh, second, we have scalability. It's easier to scale individual services independently based on demand. And third, we have flexibility. So services can be developed and maintained by different teams, potentially using different technologies. Let's talk about the disadvantages. First, we have the complexity. Managing interactions between services can be quite complex. Second, we have performance overhead. Communication between services over a network introduces latency. And number three, we have, oh no, why is this happening? Number three, we have governance. So requires a strong governance to ensure a service compatibility and compliance. Let's talk about the microservices architecture. Microservice architecture is refinement of the SOA, where the application is composed of small, independently deployable services that communicate over a network, typically using lightweight protocols such as HTTP or REST or messaging queues. Let's talk about the characteristics of the microservice architecture. Each microservice is focused on specific business function and can be developed, deployed, and scaled independently. Second, we have independent deployability. So services can be deployed without affecting the entire application. Number three, we have decentralized data management. Each microservice manages its own database or data store. Let's talk about the advantages of this system. The first thing would be scalability. Services can be scaled independently based on their specific needs. Flexibility. Teams can choose the best technology stack for each service. And number three, which is resilience. So, failure of one service does not necessarily affect the entire system. Services can be designed for fault tolerance. Let's talk about the disadvantages, and also I guess the disadvantage will be quite the same. First, we have the complexity, which is managing a large number of microservices can be quite complex in terms of deployment, monitoring, and maintaining. Number two, we might have some sort of communication overhead. Increased number of remote calls and can introduce latency and complicate debugging, and this is also can be performance overhead. Also, we can add the data management because handling data consistency and transactions across multiple servers can be quite challenging. So, in conclusion, choosing the right architecture, let's just zoom out. So, in conclusion, choosing the right architecture depends on various factors such as the size and complexity of the application, team structure, and specific business requirements. We use the monolith architecture. We use the monolithic architecture, suitable for small, medium-sized applications with simpler requirements, and the service-oriented architecture, useful for large enterprise with diverse applications that need integrated and shared functionalities. And we have microservice architecture. It's ideal for complex, large-scale applications that require high scalability, flexibility, and resilience. So each architecture has its own set of trade-offs, and the decision should align with the specific needs and goals of the projects. So that's it for this video, and see you in the future.